Hey guys, before we start this video, I just wanted to mention that only 22% of you are subscribed. So if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing to support the channel. Welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In this video, we're going to be discussing Lord Voldemort, loyal Death Eater Bellatrix Lestrange, and the child conceived by this unlikely pair. I know that emotions run wild when it comes to the cursed child, and that a lot of you don't consider it canon, but it was written by Rowling, and she even went as far as to tweet to her fans that it should be considered as canon. The issue with this is that it contradicts the original storyline in a lot of ways, and in many ways, her inconsistencies have led fans to the point of rejecting its status as part of Harry Potter canon. Whatever your perspective on the matter, this video will be discussing and including aspects of the cursed child. I myself am impartial as, like I've said, J.K. Rowling, the original writer, did say that it's canon, which makes it true. But like the rest of you, I'm not totally on board with some of the decisions that were made. Now, featured in The Cursed Child is the unlikely daughter of Bellatrix Lestrange and Lord Voldemort. Her name is Delphine, and she was conceived sometime in the mid to late 1990s, in secret at the Malfoy Manor. Her birth did actually coincide with the events of the original books. We just never had any indication of it. Delphine, who also goes by Delphi in The Cursed Child, became the only known living heir of Salazar Slytherin after Voldemort died in the Battle of Hogwarts in 1998. Her birth was kept a secret by her parents because they feared that their infamous reputations would place her in danger, especially in the event of their deaths. It is unknown what her relationship was like with her parents, or how they felt about her, as they both died while she was still a baby, but she still went on to inherit many traits from both of them. As she grew older, she became increasingly cruel, sadistic, violent, ruthless, obsessive, manipulative, cunning, charismatic, intelligent, and the list goes on. Her calculated, determined, and most of all ruthless nature meant that she would eventually go on to murder Craig Boker Jr., an act which swiftly landed her in Azkaban prison. She was fierce-tempered and would easily lose control if things went awry, another trait she inherited from her mother and father. It's interesting that she would inherit so many traits from them, given that she wasn't raised by either of them. I have often questioned her nature in an attempt to decipher why it is that she turned out the way that she did. Her mother, Bellatrix Lestrange, was one of the most feared witches in the wizarding world. Her fear-inspiring name and bloodthirsty reputation were well deserved, and she was known to have murdered and tortured many witches and wizards. Her magical capabilities were more than impressive, and she was widely considered to be one of the most powerful and dangerous witches of her time. Bellatrix Lestrange was of course Lord Voldemort's most loyal follower, and though she served him unquestionably, I do think that she always wanted more with Voldemort. She wanted to be his queen, and to rule over the magical and muggle worlds alongside him. Voldemort, on the other hand, was not so keen on a relationship with anyone. This is because he was born with an incapability of feeling love. Voldemort is perhaps the most feared dark wizard of all time, feared so much that most of the wizarding world was afraid to even utter his name. Voldemort achieved power that others could only dream of, and he was an intelligent, cunning, and manipulative man that amassed a legion of followers at the height of his power. Despite appearing to care for his followers, this wasn't the case, as Voldemort truly did not care for anyone. He had no understanding of empathy whatsoever, and simply used those around him to more quickly achieve his goal of power. If you were to approach Voldemort with your problems, he would have no interest in helping you with your problems unless he himself was affected in some way. He was incredibly self-obsessed and was dead set on becoming immortal and powerful. So, with all of that being said, you may wonder how on earth he ended up having a child. How could someone who cares for no one and is seemingly asexual have any interest in having a child with someone? Why would he do it? One theory that I had was that Voldemort had a daughter as a safeguard. He knew that he was the descendant of his ancestor, Salazar Slytherin, one of the four founders of Hogwarts and one of the most powerful wizards of all time. To Voldemort, blood status was important, which is somewhat ironic given that he's a half-blood. Nonetheless, I can see how Voldemort may have wanted to conceive a child to carry on the bloodline of his ancestor, Salazar Slytherin. Had he not carried on that bloodline, then it may have put a stop to it altogether. Procreation would have been the only way to do it, and at that point, Voldemort would see it as a necessary thing to do in order to have his legacy carry on. My other theory is that Voldemort never wanted to have a child at all, but Bellatrix, who was immensely deranged and obsessed with Voldemort, gave him a love potion. You might remember another time that a love potion was used. I am of course referring to Voldemort's own parents. Voldemort's mother, Merrippy Gaunt, used a love potion on his muggle father, and the two went on to conceive a child. Because their relationship was artificial, Voldemort was born with an incapability of feeling love, or emotion, which led to his eventual downfall was his incapability of feeling love, and it was what set him off on his path of villainy from a very young age. One of the reasons that I think that Voldemort may have been under the influence of a love potion is the way that Delphine turned out. From a very young age, she exhibited traits that very much resembled her father. She was intelligent, calculating, manipulative, and most of all, rather devoid of emotion and empathy. Fans have often wondered how someone like Voldemort would have a child, and I think that because of how Delphine turned out, the love potion argument has some merit. The only way that Delphine deviated from her father in personality was that she had a devout obsession with him. For her entire life, she yearned to be with him, to have a father, and she was less concerned with world domination or conquest. Bellatrix is just insane enough to try to use a love potion on someone like Voldemort, and one thing that the films massively downplayed was how truly and madly attracted she was to Voldemort. J.K. Rowling discussed this in an interview, and Bellatrix was, as I think is clear, I doubt that people will be particularly shocked to hear, because I'm sure that they've deduced, that Bellatrix is madly, romantically in love with Voldemort. This is, that's the obsession of her life, and I believe that Helena Bonham Carter had to be asked to tone it down after the producer called me and said, give me some background on Bellatrix so we can tell Helena about it. And I said, well, of course, it's a sexual attraction. She's madly in love with this man, and obsessed by him. Apparently, they had to ask her to bring it down because she was being a bit too sexy. There are also segments from the books which allude to her obsession with the Dark Lord. My lord, my lord. It was Bellatrix's voice, and she spoke as if to a lover. There's also a rather uncomfortable segment from the Order of the Phoenix that A, might make you shudder, and B, could perhaps allude to the conception of Delphine. Maniacal laughter was ringing in his ears. Voldemort was happier than he had been in a very long time. Jubilant, ecstatic, triumphant. A wonderful, wonderful thing had happened. Harry could not help feeling that his first foray into occlumency had weakened his mind's resistance, rather than strengthening it, and he wondered, with a feeling of great trepidation, what had happened to make Lord Voldemort the happiest he'd been in 14 years. Given Voldemort's incapability of feeling emotion, I think that a love potion really fits. Now the questions are, how long did it last for, how strong was it, and was Voldemort released from it before his death? I think Voldemort was most likely under the influence of the potion from Delphine's conception all the way to his defeat. I say this because if Voldemort knew that Bellatrix had given him anything, she surely would have paid for what she had done. I don't think that Voldemort is the type of man to take things lightly, and I think that he would have killed Bellatrix, or worse, if he found out. I don't think that he would have been very understanding. But Bellatrix, who was madly obsessed with him, was willing to take that risk, and being the powerful witch that she is, likely brewed a potion that was strong enough to last quite some time. In the case of Voldemort's parents, Merrippy gave Riddle the love potion in a drink. Shortly after consuming the beverage, he became immediately infatuated with Merrippy. In just a few short months, the two were married, and Merrippy was pregnant. But not long after getting married, the effects of the love potion faded away. This could have happened one of two ways. Number one, Merrippy could no longer live a lie and stopped giving Riddle the love potion. Or, number two, the effects of the love potion wore off unsuspectingly, and Merrippy was caught off guard. Either way, when the effects of the potion wore off, and when Tom was no longer bewitched, he was horrified with what had happened. Here he was all of a sudden, married with a child to a woman that he had no attraction towards. Dumbledore himself has speculated that Merrippy dropped the curse, hoping that Tom had genuinely fallen in love, but in actuality, as soon as Riddle was out of the trance, he went back to Little Angleton, fleeing from Merrippy and their son, disgusted with what had happened to him. I think that it's fair to say that Voldemort would be a little more than just disgusted, and would likely take some form of action. What do you guys think? How was Delphine conceived? Did Bellatrix use a love potion on Voldemort? Let us know what you think down in the comment section down below. Until next time, you're a wizard, Harry!